Thank you. Before we go any further, are you a whiskey drinker?
I am, yes.
Are you a whiskey with or without an E?
Without the E. Canadian whiskey all the way.
Okay. What is it that you think that makes whiskey so Windsor?
Well, it's been made here a really long time. So Hiram Walker brought it over in the mid 1800s. And that was kind of due to the rise in the temperance movement, possible prohibition happening. So he wanted to secure his business. So though he was American, he did move it over to the Windsor side, and we still have it today. So it's been here a long, long time.
Now, before you started working on this project, did you realize how important whiskey was to Windsor?
For sure. I think it's quite evident to anyone that lives here, visits here. I mean, you can just smell the distilling process most days that you're driving by or walking by the distillery. And we know it's kind of a core part of Walkerville, which is now part of
Which
Windsor.
made me wonder why it's important for us to stop and have an exhibit like this and dig deeper.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of whiskey drinkers in the area, but obviously we have wineries and breweries, and we have done exhibits in the past focusing on beer and wine. So this is kind of the first time to do something focused on whiskey specifically.
What are some of the more interesting artifacts that you have?
So there's a lot of interesting stuff. I think people really like just the old bottles. So one of the oldest bottles that will be on display is from 1886. We also have some bottles that would have been smuggled during Prohibition, which is pretty neat. And then recently, this was a few years ago, there's a local diver named Matt Zudema, and he found a Model T upside down in the river and pulled out some artifacts from that car. So we have them on display in the museum. So that includes a smuggled whiskey bottle, a chain that they would have pulled the crates of whiskey with over the ice across the water, a piece of the rubber from the tire. So a lot of really interesting pieces in this exhibit.
And he gave those to you to put in this exhibit?
Yes, yeah. A lot of this stuff is on loan. So the museum does have its own collection of whiskey-related items. So we have our own collection on display, as well as the local public's collections that they may have in their house. Some people just had like a crate that they found just while renovating their house, or someone also found a ledger that would have been keeping track of sales during Prohibition, and they found that in their attic. So there's a lot of really kind of unique items.
I understand the mayor also contributed to this exhibit. How did Mayor Drew Dilkins come into this?
Yes, so this exhibit has been in talks for quite some time because of the public interest in whiskey. So the mayor also has his own interest in specifically Canadian Club and the distillery. So he has his own personal collection as well. So we were able to bring some pieces from that into the exhibit too.
There's also some confusion because not only, there's the distillery and it's local, it's made local, but it's not locally owned anymore. Can you clarify that for us?
Right. So it's quite a long history. I will have some panels that explain that more in detail within the exhibition if people are interested. But basically, I'll try to sum it up as best I can. So it was owned by the Walker family for a long time. So basically from mid-1800s to when Prohibition began. We think that because of the association with whiskey during Prohibition, with crime, that's what kind of pushed the Walkers to sell the business. So since that time, it's gone through a few hands. And so the distillery and now Canadian Club, though they were once together as one, are now owned separately. So now Pernod Ricard, which produces Wisers amongst multiple other brands, owns the distillery. So we see when we drive by there, you can see the big J.P. Wiser banner. But Canadian Club is still made within the distillery. It's just owned by Beam Suntory now. So it's just different ownership, but still made locally, which is really important. So literally from the mashing process to the distillation to the barreling, aging, everything is made here.
What's the whiskey scene like in this area now beyond Canadian Club and J.P. Wiser's?
So we've grown a little bit. I think everyone, of course, associates Walkerville with whiskey. But I did want to reach out to Wolfhead Distillery for this exhibit as well. They're a newer distillery. They opened, I think it was 2016. And I'm a big fan. I've been there quite a few times. And I thought it would be nice just to kind of expand the history a little bit. As historians, we kind of think every passing day brings new history. So it doesn't necessarily have to be super old to be historical. So I wanted to bring them in. So they've also given me some photos and some of their whiskey as well to put on display.
All right. Thanks so much, Nicole.